then brings us to the fourth block of the population, every single one of whom we intend to apply the law to, so they will have no choice but to leave this country. This is the illegals. And by definition, if they're illegal in this country, they've broken the law to get here, and therefore the law should be applied and they should be kicked out. The British government does it now, but they only send a few of them away. What's the point of a law which you only apply one time in 50 or one time in 60? It's a nonsense. So we would identify steadily all the illegals and we would simply pack them back to where they came from. As easy as that. How they go away, one of the ways they get around it now is they're illegal, they've arrived here, they destroy their identity papers, then the silly, soft, liberal British government says, oh, we don't know where you come from, so we can't send you back. Which is an invitation to more to destroy their documents. Well, it's not a problem because you can tell roughly where they came from, so you can send them off. But actually, again, the same DNA evidence which allows us to know that we're descended from the hunter-gatherers who came here as the ice melted, can also pinpoint where someone comes from, virtually to the village. They've used this. There was a ghastly case a few years ago when the headless and limbless torso of a young black boy was found floating down the Thames. And they pinpointed the village where that boy came from, just from DNA research, DNA evidence. So, no more of this, we don't know where they came from. We can say exactly where they came from, and we can send them back. We will apply the law. So that lot will go. The next block is the question of asylum seekers. Now, we believe in this party that Britain should stand by its obligations under international law when it comes to asylum seekers. And our obligation is this, that anyone for whom this is the first place they can get to as a safe country, the first place, if they're being persecuted for reason of their politics, their religion, even their sexuality, if they're being persecuted for one of those reasons, then we have a duty to keep them, to take them. But that means citizens of France, French people, being persecuted because they think it's wrong to eat garlic, for instance. Well, then we have to accept someone like that. Or someone from Ireland. Or someone from the Faroe Islands, because they don't think it's right to kill whales. So the whale hunters of the Faroe Islands force them out. Then if they were at risk of their lives, we have to accept that person to be legitimate. But they're the only people who can claim asylum in this country legitimately. All the others are bogus, because they all should have stopped in the first safe country they could get to. And there's many, many safe countries between Afghanistan and Britain, Iraq and Britain, Nigeria and Britain, Colombia and Britain. It's a hoax. All those people are here because this is soft touch Britain. They're all here to leech at our expense or worse. Every single one of them is bogus, and therefore just as the British government now, when they occasionally find one who's so bogus that they've got bogus stamped on their forehead, they do occasionally throw one out. So there's nothing immoral in that, because the Labour government does it, and says this is just enforcing the law and so on. So we would do the same thing. The only difference is where we draw the line, and we wouldn't insist that they've got bogus tattooed on their forehead before we kick them out. We'd just say, if you come from a country other than one of the ones absolutely close to us, France, Ireland, Faroe Islands, out. Simple as that. We kick the whole lot out instead of just a tiny percentage of them. That deals with, again, a big, big block. Then you've got the question of the recently arrived Poles and Lithuanians and Russians and all the rest of it. As I say, while we've got no quarrel at all with those countries, with those peoples, while ones who came here in small numbers earlier could be members of the party, there's no trouble there, this country cannot cope with having so many extra labourers thrown on it. It's an appalling attack, particularly on poor families and poor communities of our own. There's no way they can compete with that. Now, the Daily Mail was saying, yeah, but these people will do the jobs the Brits won't do. No, they won't. They will do the jobs that Brits can't afford to do because the pay is so utterly bad. Yes, there are. This country has got, in our own population, people have been here 15,000 years. Some of them are bloody bone idle, I'm afraid. And there is no reason why tax-paying, hard-working people should pay for the bone idle. So we believe we should have a welfare state that looks after the sick, or someone who's fallen off a ladder and broken their leg, and so on. But if someone doesn't want to work, and is fit and capable of working, and there is work, well, let them starve. That's their choice. They shouldn't be able to leech out of our pockets, even if their ancestors have been here 15,000 years. doesn't give them a right to leech out of our pockets. So the combination of getting rid of this enormous wave of recent purely economic migration, mainly from Eastern Europe, would, one, mean that wages would rise so that people, say, with families can afford to work, and two, at the same time as that, we need to say, well, if you don't want to work, that's okay, but you're going to starve, thereby ensuring that there are enough of our people to do the jobs. So there is no reason, there's no good economic reason to have 1 million Poles working in this country. It's actually economically bad news because they're sending vast amounts of money back out of Britain to Poland. The government says, yes, but they pay taxes. Well, that's true, most of them. At least they're not working on the back. Most of them are paying taxes. But every one of them is working, has contributed to putting a British worker out of money, out of work, which means that a chunk of all our taxes is going to pay for an extra person on the dole, or has been pushed onto the long-term sick as a way of disguising that they're on the dole, or is some poor kid who normally would have gone to work and become a plumber, who's now told, well, there's no plumbing jobs left, but tell you what, you spend 3 years getting a £40,000 overdraft and you'll have a media studies degree. Isn't that great? Because it's not great. So use this degree with an enormous, crippling, life-destroying amount of debt for someone who'd have made a bloody good plumber, if there'd been a proper apprenticeship system, and if there was scope for British plumbers, which there's not, because the country's full of Poles doing the job. Meanwhile, Poland is full of Far East Asians doing the jobs because there's no one left in Poland to do the jobs. The Poles are up in arms about it. But it doesn't suit them, it doesn't suit us. So we would say, we're not going to say, right, off out tomorrow. We'll simply say, we've now withdrawn from the European Union, because that's one of our pledges, because we don't believe it right that this country should be ruled, have almost all its laws made by totally unelected foreigners over whom we have no possibility of any control, because it costs us £1.2 million every hour to be in the European Union. So we withdraw from it. The moment we've withdrawn from that, all those East Europeans would lose the right to work here. And we would then say, right, now let's look at our economy. We're not going to say to them, right, we want you out by 5 o'clock on Tuesday, because it would be chaos, and because there's so many of them now been here for so long, it would cause severe economic dislocation. So we'll just look at what they're doing and say, right, well, you're in an unskilled job, so kind of sort your affairs out here, pack your bags, you've got 3 months. Or someone might be in a skilled job. We'll say, right, you can stay here for the next 2 years while you help train a young British apprentice replacement, and then you go. Which is precisely what's been happening. There's factories up and down this country right at this minute where there's British workers are being forced to train people who've come over from China, so that the Chinese, or from India, so that they'll be able to do their job when the factory is shipped abroad in 6 months' time. So if it's fair, if it's acceptable to do that to our people in our country, then it's sure as hell fair and acceptable to do it to Poles and Russians and Ukrainians and all the rest of it. So the East European bloc recently arrived wouldn't all disappear overnight. But say 2-3 years down the line, there'd be almost none of them left here, and our jobs will be done by our people, and their jobs will be done by their people.